The Hindu Kush Himalaya, that it is ICIMOD's mandate to protect and study and advocate for, is an extraordinary geophysical zone. It's a vast highland crescent that sweeps 3,500 kilometers all the way from Afghanistan and Pakistan in the west down to Myanmar and Bangladesh in the east. It includes the Indian Himalayan hill states, the plateaus, deserts, and mountains and steppes of southwest China, and it covers all of Nepal and the Kingdom of Bhutan. Crucially, for today's discussion, it holds the third largest mass of snow and ice after the two poles. This zone is warming at twice the global average, and even the snow and ice on Everest, the tallest mountain on Earth, is now disappearing at unprecedented rates. 2/3 of this region's frozen water reserves are set to disappear by the end of the century, and changes are coming much, much faster than that. The Himalaya, of course, literally translates as abode of snow in Sanskrit, but the loss of this region's snow and ice is about much more than identity. It has implications for human survival, for peace and security, for migration. Close to 300 million people live in these mountains. That's almost half the entire population of Europe, and meltwater from the mountains contributes to rivers on which 2 billion people depend for fresh water. Failing to cut the cord on dirty fossil energy is having other drastic and immediate consequences in the form of flash floods, dangerous glacial lakes, and at the other extreme, droughts and wildfires. In order to raise awareness of the dire implications that temperature rise on these mountains has for human populations and the natural world, ICIMOD launched a new advocacy campaign last year on the anniversary of the first ever ascent of Everest. We called it Save Our Snow, whose acronym, of course, given that this is a mayday from these mountains, is the very apt SOS. While incubated by ICIMOD, it's really about setting out to create an alliance that is going to get the message out about what's happening here by bringing together and amplifying the voices of 3 powerful groups, all of whom have intimate knowledge of what's happening in high mountain Asia, and all of whom are uniquely well placed to communicate those impacts to wider audiences. The 3 groups that SOS brings together, and of which our panel are brilliant representatives, are firstly mountain scientists, especially glaciologists, who've grown more motivated than ever to speak out as they've watched climate impacts on Earth's cryosphere rapidly outpace their worst projections. Secondly, mountain communities, especially indigenous groups, people that are frontline to these impacts, often furthest from power, and are knowledge holders of the solutions. So SOS seeks to platform these communities and to equip them with the best available science. Finally, mountain athletes, climbers, guides, filmmakers, and other creatives, people who through their professional work spend a huge amount of time in the mountains, are also equally alarmed by the speed of the changes that they're seeing, and that are often truly gifted communicators with extraordinary power to connect to wider audiences. This discussion, of course, could not come at a more alarming moment, given what's happening right now in the countries that share these mountains. Asia has been engulfed in extraordinary heat. Scores have died in India, possibly hundreds in Pakistan. Climate impacts are already pushing communities with huge existing vulnerabilities in terms of malnutrition, water and food insecurity to breaking point. SOS, I suppose, is a call for solidarity. I hope that there are many people who are joining us from London as well. And I guess the question is, why should all this matter to London? First, because of course, while occupying just 2% of Earth's land surface, cities produce more than 60% of global greenhouse emissions. Decision makers and publics in London need to know that the emergency is here and now, and that it is existential. Secondly, because cities, including London, have a hugely catalytic role to play in powering the solutions, by redirecting their investment portfolios and pensions away from fossil fuels and into the solutions that need scaling up. And yes, by making sure that every political party is competing to do the most on climate rather than the least. Thirdly, there's an opportunity here to awaken some of the many links that exist between the UK and this region. There's a huge and illustrious tradition of climbing and exploration in the UK. How can we knit these powerful individuals and august organisations into this push for faster changes? SOS is one conduit. There are also hugely strong ties between academia and research institutes in the UK and Asia. How can we do more to leverage these affiliations, the knowledge and the profile of individuals and universities? And Excitingly too, London is, of course, one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the world. What more could we do to support the flow of ideas, of urgency, of agency between communities in Asia that are frontline to the impacts and diaspora communities in the UK? So SOS sets out to reinforce and enliven some of these ties of solidarity and to try to build a much bigger caucus to push for that generational shift that we now stand on the cusp of, and to do it before it's too late. You can find out more at saveoursnow.earth.